So we're going to say this in a minute, but both God's mercy and God's grace flow from his goodness. But the difference, and we'll discuss what grace is in a minute again, but mercy is when God's goodness confronts human guilt. It kind of means to stoop in kindness to the level of an inferior. It's when God brings himself down to man. Mercy actually speaks to compassion, but as a verb, as an action word. Have you ever looked at someone who felt compassionate but didn't give anything to the homeless man? Like, oh, I'm so sorry, that's so bad. You know, the other day I was driving and I just saw, I normally don't do this, but I did see a guy who put, homeless vet sitting on the side of the road, and he was just completely asleep. And so I went to give him money, but in order to give it to him, I had to wake him up. It was really funny. So I kind of did a good thing and a bad thing all at the same time. It speaks to why do good things happen to good people. No, I'm just kidding. But compassion can be a feeling or it can be an action. You see, mercy is God being actively compassionate towards man. He doesn't just feel some type of way, but he acts on it. And that in and of itself is mercy. Now, there's something that might blow your mind. Mercy is referenced in the Old Testament 4 times as much as in the New. We kind of look at God as a God of law and order in the Old Testament and a God of peace and love and kindness in the New Testament. And that's completely false. Completely false. Because like we said, the attributes of God, they're not something that God does. They are what God is. God cannot choose to be one thing 1 minute and choose to be another thing another minute. Which means for both grace and mercy, God was equally full of mercy and equally full of grace in the Old Testament as in the New Testament. There was never a time where more was withheld or unleashed. He's always been the same God, which is where we'll start to see the breakdown of these two words come together. So there's no attribute of God that's ever more present than the other. But a certain attribute of God may be needed more than other times. It may be called upon on different times. This might blow your mind, but mercy, God's mercy falls on everyone, not just Christians. Lamentations 3:22 actually says, "It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not." So we threw a couple examples of it being, us not getting what we deserve. And in that way, we are somewhat right. And to bring up Noah is interesting because we're going to see the breakdown of the differences between grace and mercy, especially in that story. But we have to believe that God wiping the planet clean was actually an act of mercy as well. God was not less merciful at that point and more merciful at another. It's actually interesting in Isaiah chapter 63, verse 7, it says, "I will mention the loving kindness of the Lord and the praises of the Lord according to all the Lord hath bestowed on us." This is the King James Version. That's why it says hath. "And the great goodness towards the house of Israel, which he hath bestowed on them according to his mercies and according to the multitude of his loving kindness." This is the part that's interesting. "For he said, surely they are my people, children that will not lie. So he was their Savior. In all their affliction, he was afflicted." In all of their affliction, he was afflicted. God's goodness confronting human guilt through mercy means that God does not get any pleasure when man suffers, whoever that man is. God does never, he never gets happy when sinners are punished. That's not the right way to explain that. God did not sit up in heaven during Noah's flood and be like, perfect, good, awesome, this is awesome. That's not how it worked. In our afflictions, he is in fact afflicted. He's not happy when we suffer. And another thing to understand about God's mercy, and this one's going to blow your mind as well because it continues to blow mine. Mercy did not start after we sinned. Mercy did not start after we sinned, and it did not increase after the cross. God's mercy has been the same from the very beginning. And we can get this odd notion that God is showing mercy because Christ died, when in reality, Christ died because God is showing mercy. And there's a significant difference. So when we talk about mercy, it's important to understand it's God's goodness confronting human guilt. Now, a lot of this conversation can't be complete until we discuss grace. So what we're going to do now is take another 5 minutes, talk about God's grace amongst yourselves, 5 minutes, and we will come right back to discussing what is God's grace.